No, but once it happened. Japan's Iron Lady was actually elected. And I'm laughing because I just want to see the reaction of feminists at this point. Because on one hand, she's the very first ever female prime minister. But at the same time, she's an ultra conservative. You know what that is?
It's a glitch in the Matrix. Ignorance is bliss.
All right, let's check out the news, shall we?
Now to this, Japan's parliament this morning elected the country's first female prime minister, 64-year-old conservative Sanae Takaichi.
64 where? 64, she looks 50.
Takaichi is known as Japan's Iron Lady. Takaichi secured a majority in both the
This guy's really happy, but this guy.
lower and upper houses of parliament, ending 3 months of political uncertainty. CBS News foreign correspondent Anna Corrin is following this for us and joins us from Hong Kong with more. Good morning, Anna. So tell us about Takaichi and how she's expected to lead now.
Ohayou gozaimasu.
Well, Takaichi, she has shattered the glass ceiling in Japan, Errol, after winning that parliamentary vote today in what had become a rather drawn-out process. Now, what got across the line was that her ruling Liberal Democratic Party formed a new coalition with Japan Innovation Party. As you say, she's 64 years old, a conservative nationalist. She's a protege of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who, as you may remember, was assassinated in 2022.
Doesn't surprise me. It's always conservatives that get assassinated, isn't it? Talking about the word conservative, you may have noticed that she said she's a conservative and a nationalist. But she also said this.
Conservative nationalist. She's line was that her ruling Liberal Democratic Party formed
Her ruling Liberal Democratic Party, and this is where Americans explode. Because they're like, hold on a minute. What's going on here? Let me give you a little perspective on that very quickly. Just for those who don't know, liberalism, and in fact, liberal is used very differently in America, in Europe, and as you can see clearly in Asia, in the sense that while in America, usually when you say someone is a liberal, you mean that they are socially liberal, and so they tend to be left or center, and usually they end up voting for the Democratic Party. In Europe, and in Japan in this case, when you say a liberal, you're generally speaking referring to a classical liberal, which is either a centrist or more often right of center, so a center-right position. In this specific case, everyone refers to her as the Iron Lady. They say she's far right. They call her an ultra-conservative. They say she's a super nationalist. So that doesn't exactly sound center-right to me. So we'll have to see how this juxtaposes with Japanese government. So we'll have to have a look at that. But in general, classical liberalism is for free market, small government intervention, individual liberty, personal responsibility. So yeah, from an American perspective, if you say that someone, for instance, in Europe, like in Italy, they say they are liberals, it would coincide either with like a moderate Republican or with a right-leaning libertarian on some aspects that have to do with the market. Now, my family, like my dad, is always voted for one of the liberal parties in Italy, so he is center-right. We tend to be center-right from a European perspective, but that's just so we're clear that the words are used very differently. So when you hear Liberal Democratic Party, not democratic in the American sense, that would be in Europe, that would be more like a social democratic party or something like that. Let's go.
Formed a new coalition with Japan Innovation Party. As you say, she's 64 years old, a conservative nationalist. She's a protege of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who, as you may remember, was assassinated in 2022. She is expected to lead Japan to the right. Now, she's already selected her cabinet and has appointed a woman to be her finance minister, another first for Japanese politics. What we are witnessing really is a major shift in the political landscape in what has always been a very male-dominated society. The Prime Minister, Errol, comes from humble beginnings, and like many other political elite in Japan. An interesting fact about her, she was a heavy metal drummer, rode a motorbike in her youth, and I believe that Iron Maiden is one of her favourite bands.
I swear I didn't do it on purpose, guys. I swear this was absolutely coincidental, but I do appreciate that, I'll tell you that much, as a metalhead. Anyways, couple more things to say. First and foremost, I absolutely love this hue of blue. It's gorgeous. Another thing, blue, it's usually a color that is associated with the right wing in Europe. And at this point, I guess, in Japan. And you might be thinking, but why? Well, because red is the commies. It's always confused me that in America, red is right wing and blue is left wing. It's literally the only place that does that. Because everyone else, if you tell me red, I'm thinking communists. Whatever, it doesn't matter. These are just colors. But I will say, when they say that she's a nationalist, like strongly nationalist, I think that's a good thing, to be honest. Also because when I think of nationalism in the Japanese sense, considering how polite Japanese are, at the end of the day, it doesn't sound threatening as a word to me in any way, shape or form. I know that there are some nationalists that can be nasty, but in general, I am pro-nationalism when it's used as an alternative to complete and utter flooding of migrants, which is what has happened both in Europe, in the UK, and up to a certain extent in America. Now, you might be thinking, yeah, but when you think of nationalism in America, some people, as I say, can be nasty. Absolutely. You've got nasty people everywhere, to be fair with you. And then, of course, you're going to bring up ICE. You're going to tell me, yeah, but look what nationalism is doing and the right wing, ICE, and deporting all these people, the migrants and the illegals. Okay. Now, I've heard people saying that ICE has deported legal immigrants, and I don't know if that's true. I haven't had a chance to confirm, since a lot of misinformation has been spreading around from a lot of left-wing sources, and at this point, which to me was damaging to their cause, because if you show me a picture and you tell me, look, ICE agents have deported this 15-year-old girl, this 12-year-old girl, and then instead it's a 24-year-old girl, and had nothing to do with ICE. It was actually a police operation because she was walking in the middle of a highway, like an interstate. Then, yeah, okay, now I don't believe it. Now you need to show me proof. So if it's true that some ICE agents have actually forcefully kicked out people that were legal, then I will be against it, of course. But the fact that ICE has to deal with millions of migrants and illegals is not this administration's fault. It's Biden's administration's fault. Because if Biden had done his job with securing the border and ensuring law and order, then there would be no ICE. Think about that for a moment. If you hate ICE, take it with Biden. Considering that, I think it's a good thing that Japan has got a nationalist in power. Of course, if she does some horrible stuff, then I will call it out. But as a general principle, Japan should stay Japanese. I agree with that. Let's make sure they don't end up like Europe.
In what has always been a very male-dominated society. The Prime Minister, Errol, comes from humble, always been...
Now, there is another thing she said that I want to address. This one.
Really is a major shift in the political landscape in what has always been a very male-dominated society.
I personally don't think that matters, neither to me nor to the Japanese people. Why don't the Japanese care that it's like, oh, yeah, but wait a second, it's a woman in power? Isn't that feminism? Not something that the right wing or conservatives appreciate or support, particularly in the most modern iterations of feminism. I think in the presence of a greater problem, once again, illegal immigration, whether or not it's a female or a male in power becomes secondary in priority. Moreover, this actually speaks to the right wing and the difference of thought within the right wing. Because you see, one thing that I always accuse the radical left of doing, and some moderate left people do it too, is that they treat every conservative the same way. But the reality is that this demonstrates that there are plenty of conservatives that don't care about a woman being in power as long as she protects tradition and pushes conservative principles. Of course, there are also conservatives, usually on the far end of the right, that absolutely hate this idea, and I've seen them in my comments. They exist. I'm not going to pretend they don't. But the idea of clumping together all right-wingers and all conservatives and then say, oh, how did this happen? Oh, conservatives are going to be mad. No, they voted her. So this tells you that center-right, moderate right-leaning, general conservatives usually don't care about this. Yes, they are, like me included. Of course, I'm a strong supporter of the traditional family. I also think people should have their own freedom. So if like a woman wants to have a career, have a career. But I am happy that I married a traditional wife, and she loves the idea of I provide, I work, and she does the job that usually a woman has historically done for the last 10,000 years. And a lot of conservatives think that way. The idea that she's in power is not a big deal. And then even though there are definitely plenty of right-wingers that hate the idea that a female is in power. Once again, that's a difference of thought within the right wing and the conservative movement at a planetary level. And if all right-wingers were like, oh, they are all sexist and they all hate women, they're all misogynist, okay, then how did this happen? How did she get in power? But think for a moment, right? And Japan is very traditionalist as a country.
Rode a motorbike in her youth, and I believe that Iron Maiden is one of her favourite bands. Margaret Thatcher, Britain's first female Prime Minister, is one of her heroes, and she has proven that perseverance pays off. She secured the leadership of her party earlier this month, and that was after her third attempt. So I think the message there is that really you must never give up.
And the heavy metal experience, as well as the bike, gives her a bit of edge, dare I say, like from her younger days. But what issues will she face now? I mean, she faced a lot of issues getting to this top job, and it won't be smooth. So what should we expect from her leadership?
No, it won't be smooth. And as you say, she's got a lot on her plate. She's expected to be meeting with President Trump later this week or early next week. He's expected to stop off in Japan as part of his Asia tour. Japan, as we know, one of America's strongest allies in the region, and of course one of its largest trading partners, so obviously a lot there to discuss. She will then head to APEC in South Korea, making her debut on the international stage. She believes, Errol, in a stronger Japanese military and has a very hawkish stance on China domestically.
Yeah, that sounds quite right-wing, doesn't it?
She's dealing with inflation and slow growth. But, you know, the Japanese currency and markets have responded positively to her appointment in the belief that she will implement her Japan is back policies and stimulate the economy. Now, interestingly, she has vowed to regulate immigration, which has become a real...
Look at this, though. All of the Japanese... They're all like clapping, they're all like professional. If this was the West, you would have had like Antifa here, everyone screaming like maniacs, fascists. That's what it would have been in the freaking West.
A real hot button issue in Japan. This is a country facing a fast-aging population coupled with a very low birth rate. Now, previous governments have relaxed immigration policies to boost its workforce and obviously to grow, but that has also started to change the fabric of society, and people are pushing back. So do expect to see tighter controls on immigration. Now, an interesting...
Good, that's a great... yeah, because at the end of the day, if you have a low birth rate problem, you just have to have the natives have more babies while maintaining a normally regulated immigration flow that is legal. Full stop. Flooding your country with millions of migrants, many of which are Muslims, by the way, it's not the solution to low birth rate. That would be full-on replacement. That is replacement of voter base. And it's a very radical left position, and I strongly oppose it.
In fact, Errol, is that the average tenure of a Japanese prime minister in the last 30 years is 16 months. So she's obviously hoping to beat that that average. So we'll have to wait and see how she goes.
It's a tough job. She seems up to it. Rock and roll has reached Japan. Anna Corin, great to chat with you from Hong Kong.
I'm just going to say one thing to end this video. I just hope the left doesn't shoot her dead. Metatron Uncensored. Sayonara. If you appreciate my content so far and wish to help ensure my ability to continue to tell it how it is, regardless of any possible backlash, please support this channel on Patreon. Any support helps me and my team of academics keep the channel strong and gives us the means to fight back against the political rewriting of history. Stand with us, form the wall, defend the truth.